Welcome to this meeting of the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel on the 28th of June 2023. I declare the meeting open at 1:10 p.m. My name is Julie Walsh and I'm the chair of today's panel. Also sitting on the panel today are expert members Linda Kelly and Heather Wharton and community member Richard Colley. Acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledges the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call the Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today. There are no apologies. The following declarations of interest have been made in respect of all of the panel members, myself, Heather Wharton, Linda Kelly and Richard Colley. In respect of item 6.3, we've all declared a non-significant non-pecuniary interest in that item, as one of the objectors is Dennis McManus, who sits as a community member on the local planning panel. None of us have any personal professional relationship with Mr McManus other than that association, and in those circumstances we consider that the interest is non-significant, is a non-significant interest such that it does not preclude us from determining that item. The procedure for the meeting. The council website contains a copy of the operational guidelines for the panel meeting, but I'll summarise the most important points. All panel members have read the business paper and received a briefing from council staff in respect of all items. The panel is charged with determining the 6 development applications on the agenda today. We'll hear from registered speakers. There are registered speakers, one registered speaker for item 6.5 and a number of speakers for item 6.6. We hear from objectors first, followed by applicants' representatives. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, but that may be extended at my discretion. A bell will ring at the conclusion of 3 minutes, and I will then ask you to finish your sentence. The panel members may have questions. The objectors speak first, then the applicants' representatives. The panel members may have questions, and I may seek a response to any issue raised from the relevant council officer. This is very important. Once a speaker has spoken, they will not be permitted to speak again unless it is in response to a question by the chair or other panel member. When we've heard from all speakers, we will move into closed session to deliberate, and we'll return to the public meeting to announce our decision. That will be live streamed, and the minutes of the meeting should be placed on the council website within 2 to 3 business days. Could I please ask everyone to place their mobile phones on silent? There are no registered speakers for items 6.1, 6.2, 6.3 and 6.4. In relation to item 6.5, which is DA 21/0513, change of use of existing boarding house to serviced apartments at Lot 2 DP 1140855, 19 Funston Street, Bowral. I have one registered speaker, Jan Wilson, who is an objector. Is Jan Wilson here? Yeah. Oh, sorry, if you just come forward to the Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. If you could please proceed. So you're aware that this one is recommended for refusal and you support that recommendation, I take it? Absolutely. Thank you. Please proceed. If you just stop, I think the microphone needs to be turned on.
Oh,
thank you.
Yep. It's there now. Fine. I'm speaking on behalf of residents of Belmore Street, which is the adjoining street. It runs off Funston Street. The agenda states in a number of places that there's very little, in fact no, loss of amenity to neighbouring properties. I find that extraordinary. I don't know who made that decision. On page 143 of the agenda, there is a photograph of the site and the roundabout at the corner of Funston, Kangaloon, Mossvale Roads. It's a major roundabout. It is continually used. There are currently 3 multi-dwelling buildings on the corners of that roundabout. The 4th corner has now just been sold, presumably with a view to another multi-storey or multi-dwelling facility. I've been trying to find out if there are any regulations relating to the entry and exit of vehicles onto roundabouts. I can't find it. I presume there's regulations somewhere, but it's incredibly difficult doing a left-hand turn now from Mossvale Road into Funston Street because the view lines are completely obliterated by cars that are now already parking on Funston Street at that proposed development. The western end of Funston Street already has a sign on restricting parking for a certain distance before traffic turns into Station Street. It's my view that there should be at least a parking sign erected forbidding parking from the corner of the roundabout a little way down Funston Street so that the lines of vision aren't impaired. Personally, I think there should be no parking in Funston Street at all. Trying to cross Funston Street as a pedestrian, and certainly I'm slightly disabled at the moment, is impossible. So pedestrian access is definitely not there. The amenity of the residence in Belmore Street, which is largely residential, there is one medical practice, otherwise it's residential. Cars are going to have to park in Belmore Street, which they already do now from Harris Farm, obviously impacting the amenity and the safety of residents in a residential street. So I'm delighted to know that this proposal has been recommended for not being approved, and I support that wholeheartedly. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of my friends and residents.
Thank you. I'll just check if there are any questions. Did you have any questions? Did you have any questions? No. Thank you for coming along and speaking today. As I indicated, when we've heard from the speakers in the next item, we'll go into closed session.
Right.
And then we'll come back and announce our decision, which will be live streamed. So if you don't want to wait for that, you can actually see that on the YouTube channel.
I'll go home and put the television on. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. So the next speaker I have, the first speaker I have registered for 6.6, which is 22 DA 21/1043, 22 lot community title subdivision at 1 and 7 Reg Grundy Drive, Bundanoon. The first speaker I have is Mr. Andrew Rumsey. Thank you. If you could please come forward and just turn the microphone on. It's the bottom right-hand corner.
Testing.
Thank you. Yes, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Honourable Council members, my name is Andrew Rumsey and my roots here run deep. My family established our home in Bundanoon in 1988, adjacent to what is now known as the Reg Grundy estate. As children, my brother and I watched the pastures that sprawled as far as the eye could see, filled with cattle and sheep. Over the course of the 3+ decades that we've resided here, we have witnessed the transformation of Bundanoon, a progression which has invited an influx of opportunities. Affordable housing options compared to Sydney, better access to medical support, and an expansion of community activities have blossomed from the development of residential zones, attracting a younger demographic seeking a wholesome country setting for raising their families, a sentiment I personally share. The proposed development lies on our western boundary. While we've deeply appreciated the view over the years, we understand the ephemeral nature of it. To claim entitlement over a view we do not own and have not paid for would be folly. Residents complaining under the guise of environmental impacts when we are currently seeing the strictest state and council nature preservation measures to date being taken is something I find hard to digest. It is bewildering to me that residents of the already developed part of the Reg Grundy estate raise objections to this proposed land development, considering their houses are a direct result of land being developed. It is a stark display of it's okay for us but not for others mentality, a contradiction difficult to ignore. Allow me to paint the current picture of the proposed land development area. It is no longer adorned with grazing livestock. Instead, it is overrun with an abundance of blackberry, thistle bushes, and other weeds whose seeds constantly find their way onto our property. Dead trees stand as solemn reminders of the drought and flood we have suffered, and this is all a ticking time bomb, a potential bushfire hazard nestled right next to Bundanoon's designated safe zone, the Bundanoon Oval. While I endorse meticulous consideration of preserving natural flora and fauna, we must acknowledge that this land, as it stands, has been abandoned and degraded. No stewardship has been extended to its upkeep, resulting in a far cry from a habitat conducive to thriving biodiversity. Provided all environmental assessments have been satisfactorily met, I find no basis for objections against the development of an area already designated as residential. Our vista may change, but the potential benefits far outweigh the losses. The development would offer our community growth, prosperity, diversity, all of this in the biggest rental and housing market crisis the Highlands has ever seen. We are for a Bundanoon that evolves to accommodate its growing population, supports its local economy, and prioritises safe and responsible land use. I urge the Council to consider this view and progress with the proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rumsey, can you just tell me what your address is?
130 Erith Street, Bundanoon.
And so really, I've got you listed as an objector, but the nature of your submission is really that you support the proposal.
Yes.
And do you have any interest in this DA?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. Did you have any questions? Thank you for coming along today. The next registered speaker is Linda Philpott. Please come forward. Oh, so I've got Colin speaking last, so I'll leave it on that basis. So you don't wish to speak?
I'd like Colin to speak.
Okay, I'll leave Colin till the last. So the next speaker I have is Samantha Tanner. Thank you. Please come forward. Thank you. If you press the bottom right-hand corner, it works. Thank you. And so, Samantha, you're speaking on your own behalf?
Yes, and hopefully on behalf of Adam Tanner too, who can't be here today.
Oh, okay. Thank
Yes.
you. Please proceed.
Thank you.
Actually, just give me your address.
Yes, 10 Idlewood Ridge, Bundanoon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you guys for your time today. A year or so ago, we commissioned a Hayes environmental report to review the BDAR that was submitted via the DA. There is question that the adequacy of a single survey done on a single day and whether it was sufficient enough. This seems to be the case for all the threatened flora and fauna. We actually have some recordings that have been verified of the whistling tree frog, endangered frog, and that has been as part of the Sydney University Frog ID program. An ABC story from the DPIE at Bundanoon shows extremely rare orchids were found in Bundanoon as a result of a prolonged study. One day in summer to do field work of a 5 hectare space cannot possibly detect or identify all the threatened flora and fauna in Wingecarribee. It is insufficient, like looking for whales out of a whale season. NALA says they have based their BDAR on 994, but it is not to the environmental code. Every time this DA is deferred, they're just putting another layer on top, wrong roads on diagrams, wrong lot numbers. What is actually being approved here? So there has been findings of the pot-bellied greenhood orchid in the New South Wales South Coast, especially in the Southern Highlands area and the Shoalhaven area as well. So this flower, the petals are the size of a fingernail, which makes it almost impossible to spot and is more remarkable than a group of about 170 of the rare orchids that have been found in the New South Wales Southern Highlands. In our BDAR report, there is misleading information regarding these orchids. It is assumed that the survey was conducted on the 12th of February 2020, and as this is the only day in February listed in Table 11 of the BDAR, surveys were undertaken on each of the various Table 11 does not specify what surveys were undertaken on each of the various survey days. A survey conducted on just one occasion for a terrestrial orchid at the beginning of its flower seasoning, only a fortnight after a severe drought has broken, and without use of a reference population is not sufficient to adequately demonstrate absence of the species. The species actually lies dominant under the soil for most of the year, emerging to flower in autumn, following onset of rain and a drop in temperature. The BDAR does not refer to the specific survey requirements for the species, nor to a reference population being used. It doesn't discuss the implications of the severe drought and does not specify the method and effort used in the survey. It is not clear that the assessor is aware of what is required to adequately survey for this species. Also to mention in the fauna side of things, threatened fauna survey methods and effort conducted for the eastern pygmy possum on site are not sufficient to demonstrate absence. It's a tiny and cryptic species. A published study by experts found that the eastern pygmy possum is rarely detected by most survey methods even when present. The most reliable detection methods are Yes, no worries. So the BDAR does not specify in what seasons or what dates each of the respective surveys for threatened species were undertaken. A list of all dates is provided and a list of techniques, but these are not correlated to enable a reviewer to confirm this. Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Yes.
So you spent your time telling us about some inadequacies.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Their quantity had not been truly represented.
Mm-hmm.
In light of that, what is it that you're seeking? Like, what is it you've identified? You've given us all these facts from your study. Is it that you think the land, therefore, shouldn't be developed at all, or it should be managed in a particular way? Like, what is the end goal of you having sought this information?
The land that they want to cut down is endangered woodlands. So essentially, I am objecting to proceed with any development due to the inadequacy of all the reports that have come through on the endangered species. I've checked your website, and you have a variety of threatened species in flora and fauna, two of which the pygmy possum and the orchid are listed on that. And if they are also found in that woodlands, I object to proceed with that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. You also mentioned that there were wrong maps and wrong lot numbers and things like that.
Yes.
We will be hearing, I understand, from the ecologist. Do you have, just to assist us for them to respond, is there anything particular that you've noted as like, yes, I know maps X, Y, and Z, or is it just a general concern? Is there something you can specifically point to?
Yes, the whole lot map with all of the development and proposed development, and then also the bushfire report is wrong at the moment too.
Okay,
but
great.
I'm pretty sure Colin and Vanessa will expand on that.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming along
Thank
today. So the next registered speaker I have is Vanessa Rippler, and I understand you're speaking on your own behalf and on behalf of some other residents, so in those circumstances I propose to give you 6 minutes. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, it is all part of the DA plan. Just no, it's not material that you had last time, but it is all critical, I think, and it shows in detail.
Please proceed.
Sorting off.
And can I just get your address?
My address is 8 Idlewood Ridge, Bundanoon.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Belinda and Shane McGraw. Their address is actually 128 Erith Street, so they're exactly next door to the first gentleman that spoke in support of the development. There are some colour photos of the stream that you've been given, and the first photo, I believe, looks up the hill, and you can see Belinda and Shane McGraw's house at the top of the hill. This picture here, the first one on the stapled lot. The photo is looking up the stream and looking uphill to lots 2, 3 and 4. Their block and house at 128 Erith Street stands adjacent to those blocks of 3, 4 and 5 of the proposed development. They have included a map where they've drawn a watercourse on it, a printed map, if you can see that, with pink text on it. I will read directly from their email. One of our concerns was the watercourse that is marked at the beginning of the border of proposed lots 1 and 2. It actually commences much further back from stormwater runoff. There is a large culvert under our driveway on Erith Street, which runs into an easement that flows across 3 blocks of land before entering the marked watercourse. With the volume of water that moves through this area in heavy rain, we feel a wider area of vegetation and building exclusion is required either side of this. This wet environment is evidenced by the reeds that are growing well into the area of proposed lots 2 and even 3. We've spoken to the neighbours and believe that this culvert was put in place as part of an agreement between Council and State Rail to keep water off the railway line. It was supposedly going to be resolved properly when curb and guttering was installed at the front of our lots. However, this has not happened. We have attached diagrams showing the start of the drain at the railway line and through to eventually join the creek. In heavy rain, the water follows the contours of the land to spread across Erith Street lots before flowing into proposed lots 3 to the creek. The increase in reeds is depicted by the orange on the plan. There are some these are the plants as we were advised by a local nursery for us to plant in our rain garden as they thrive in wet environments, so they're occurring naturally. The lots in our area of Erith Street do not have stormwater. When building our house, we had to install a rain garden to contain our stormwater on our block. We have a rain garden and then a rubble pit. The seepage from this and the other lots in our area, combined with the natural contour of the land, increases the water flow to the creek. The aerial view pictures that are used in the reports and maps are long outdated in the DA. Not sure how long they can reference these, but they don't show any of the Idlewood houses nor ours. There is far more vegetation currently than these images depict, including the reeds as above and many new eucalypt seedlings, saplings and trees. We like seeing the bush regeneration. And there's mention of the whistling tree frog, and then they say, when we first purchased our land, we were advised that this was one of the main reasons for the land in question not being developed, so it may be worth bringing up again. We are pretty sure we saw one on our woodpile last spring and will take photos if we come across it again. So that was it. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Just wait, there might be questions. Did you have any questions, Linda? Would you have any questions for that? No.
I think just in regard to that, I am not opposed to this development being done properly. I'm very concerned about the water drainage, etc., and that's what this couple who've asked me to speak on their behalf. There's no drainage whatsoever along several of the building blocks, and so they could fall away. They're in a wetland.
Thank you.
Now go on to, will you let me know when I should start the second?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, now I'm speaking on behalf of...
Yep.
Okay.
So you've got 3 minutes. Yep.
Yes. Thank you once again, panel, for the opportunity to speak. You have photos of a waterway, and everyone knows that this is a riparian zone. Historically, when everyone built in stage 1 of the development in Idlewood Ridge, they had a 10-metre setback rule enforced by council. I think we, who have a stream at the bottom, my husband tells me we had 14-metre setback rule. Everyone had to keep back from that stream or their plan was knocked back by council. The last planning panel meeting was in December 22. On January 21 of this year, a woman from NRAR telephoned me. She said she was calling because she had seen my emails to the department and noted that I had not been given a proper response. She said she had been through the council DA, used to work previously on a council and found the DA confusing with mounds of paperwork. She mentioned that an independent assessor would need to physically visit the site and that they did not give exemptions to developers to fill in riparian zones. There is still no controlled activity approval document to do works in a riparian zone. I was told by NRAR that that would be in breach of the Water Management Act if there is none. The Department of Planning and Environment issues a control activity approval. Email correspondence has been included in the documents for the DA dated 8th of Feb 23 this year as a written response to a Gannon Cuneo from Wingecarribee Council who made an inquiry. So this was just a couple of weeks since the woman called me. Gannon made an inquiry. Kieran from Water Licensing Service Desk responded, including the assessment conducted determined that the water course on the site shows no connectivity to the mapped water course upstream and no signs of clear banks, so it's not on waterfront land. This is not about being on waterfront land. It's about being a riparian zone and part of an ecosystem. This was only 2 weeks later from when the woman at NRA had told me that an independent assessor would need to come out on foot. We have no idea of the additional information, if any, that Gannon Cuneo sent to Kieran at the Water Licensing Service Desk to make his decision. If we look at the drainage drawings provided by CDS, the print and pictures are so small that they're indecipherable. This is surely not enough information for Council to determine major works to change water flow. I cannot see how lots 2, 3, 4 and 5, being in a wet zone, are viable building blocks with all the seepage down the hill. They are waterlogged blocks on a slope. This waterway links up further downstream to the Currumbunda wetland, which is signposted as land for wildlife in big capital letters just after the dog park. It all feeds from this riparian area. There are 85 pages on the Department of Planning and Environment that have been created as a framework to look after water and its ecosystems. The Council website has pages and pages dedicated to endangered flora and fauna in the Wingecarribee area, danger to the natural environment, habitat and animal corridors, of which this is one. There are pages dedicated to tree revegetation and reparation, endangered platypus, black cockatoos, the list goes on, and I'm just wondering who is actually enforcing this. I'm finishing now. The authority now passes to Council, who have known that this is a riparian zone and applied the legislation to stage 1 of the development. Legislation of the DPIE 2017 guidelines says that a riparian zone cannot be filled, cannot be interfered with and cannot be piped. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just check. Did you have any questions? Did you have any questions? No. Did you have any questions? Thank you very much. So that leaves the final speaker, Colin Tyson. And Mr. Tyson, I understand you're speaking on your own behalf and also on behalf of the earlier Linda Philpott. So I'll give you 3 minutes each. Thank you.
And Klaus Riepler, ma'am.
Sorry?
And Klaus Riepler.
Who was that?
In the background there.
Oh, okay. And did you register? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'll give you 9 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Are you timing this? Thank you. Thank you.
Before I start, I'd like to apologise for my state. I'm an inpatient at Prince of Wales with a paraplegia caused by staph infection 2 months ago. So if I get a bit wobbly, please stop me and I'll clarify my issues. First of all, there's a patch of land. Oh, I need to find the page. But there's a patch of land of about 2,000 square metres in the community lot, just adjacent to the upstream of the dam. That is variously under the NALA report. It's to be protected. In the bushfire report, it's to be cleared for an asset protection zone. In the engineer's report, it's to be inundated and a trackway put in for maintenance of the asset protection zone. In the vegetation management plan, it's to be replanted to a full forest assemblage, and it's also in the engineer's report to be inundated. The question I have is, one piece of land can't be all 5 things. Can't be cleared, left alone, cleared, left alone, cleared, left alone. The reason for that is the assemblage of documents that the panel and the council have had to look at over the last 2.5, 3 years of this development, at the expense of the developer lodging a $2,000 application fee. We've spent hundreds of hours on this. The community lot is an example of the catastrophe of an overlay of documentation, much of which is redundant, much of which is no longer applicable, and it should have been stripped out so the panel will have a clear view of what's going on. It also contains 16 structures, concrete and gravel structures for drainage, which the community plan doesn't recognise and doesn't accept as their responsibility. So the question is, who is going to maintain that into the future? No answer to that is in the documentation. The panel is entitled to expect accurate, complete, factual, unambiguous planning detail. You don't get it with this application. You shouldn't have to sift through the documentation to find the answers, nor should council necessarily have to sift through it, and certainly not consultant people who are on a deadline of a certain amount of hours per project. But if I can give you some specific examples of where this is confusion, is since 2015 there's been a 2 hectare portion of Lot 11. Lot 11 is not included in the bushfire reports. Only Lot 18 is. Lot 11 is a 3,300 square metre block adjacent to a 2 hectare portion of Bundanon Oval, which since 2015 has been designated as regeneration. There is ground cover a metre on a high. There is a mid-storey, and there is a upper canopy up to 25 metres high. This is within 7 metres of a building envelope that has not been assessed for slope or hazard. Now, if this DA is approved currently, then there will be, according to RFS, a building entitlement on that site, and that can't be revoked. A person will buy a block of land, they go along to council, look, I want to build a house. They will not be able to provide an asset protection zone on that property, and yet one exists for a building envelope. A litigation issue for council, and there's a further 6 blocks adjoining the dam where the same issue applies, because the asset protection zone has been set back at 14 metres, but that's only for the grass that's there now. The vegetation management plan says full forest in the fullness of time and requires a 36 metre setback. Also, if you look at the fire plan while we're on it, lots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 do not have any asset protection zones because clearly there is a page missing in the bushfire report. But this is not a problem for the bushfire consultant because at page 14, 5th paragraph down, they say, the final asset protection zones will be determined when the owner goes to council to lodge a building application. You can't build a house in these building zones. Finally, please stop me when I have 1 minute to go, please, because there's a big killer point to come in. What's been given to the New South Wales Office of Water and several other different departments of DPIE is version C of the engineering details. You can't find version C in the accumulation of documentation for approval. What you've been asked to approve is version E. The version E is simply that. Okay, I'll stop on that. Version C, version E. Finally though, the big issue is that every single application, every single report in this application is predicated on the NALA report over there, which says there's a PCT, Planned Community Type 994, a grassy woodland. If I may, you should have documentation in front of you. If you open it, you'll see a big colour thing from the SEED, State Environmental Education Sharing, which shows clearly that Idlewood and Reg Grundy Drive are surrounded by PCT 3302, which is a sclerophyll forest, you would imagine. Sclerophyll forests are class and formation that are completely different and cannot be swapped out for a grassy woodland. Every single report in this DA is predicated on the wrong PCT. This DA needs to go back to TORS, start all over again, and identify the proper PCT, which will identify the proper vegetation, proper species to be protected, and from that will fall all the other details of a proper DA. When was that changed? My component is going to speak to after this. We'll say somewhere around about 1 year to this date, actually, the 26th or 28th of June last year. The PCTs were mapped under New South Wales vegetation mapping, and they were changed. Of course, the latest NALA report is 2 months after that, and it beggars the question why, if I can find out that the PCT has changed. Why hasn't the DA recognised the current application? I ask you, please, panel, to either approve this and we can go elsewhere with it, knock it back and start all over again, because there's a decent solutions to be had with this application where you can have decent blocks, fantastic, same, better profit margins, but please do not defer it, because if it's deferred once more, you'll get another accumulation on top of the other accumulation, and fundamentally we have to remove the P from under the pile of mattresses. And the P here is that the reports are wrong, and we will find more and more errors with these reports if we continue to put another accumulation on top. And I'll stop with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that the conclusion of your
I
presentation?
think that's into my 9 minutes, isn't it?
Thank you.
No, it's
Oh.
not.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just.
Just wait a minute. I'll just check. Linda, is that the 9 minutes? Oh, sorry. You've got 3 more minutes.
Oh,
Thank you.
1 minute 45.
Oh, sorry. 1 minute
No,
45.
okay. Well, let's just talk about included in your notes, and I'll have to stagger over here without falling. I don't have copies of that. You'll have to share that. That is the engineering details that you've been provided as a planning panel. You'll see some of the font goes down to font 4. Lucky if you can get down to font 2. They probably would have done that. In that, the dam is to be removed and replaced with another dam. There will be a higher dam, 1 metre taller. The water there will be raised by water level in the dam will be raised by 300%. There'll be 2,500 tonnes of dam floor removed and stockpiled. There'll be 1,500 square metres inundated of swampland, which is really good for things like, bird life and amphibian life and all the rest. Sorry, whistling tree frog, and in fact, the red-capped toadlet, which was surveyed for 200 metres further up the hill in the trees. That's where you find toadlets. Now you find them in dams, but that's neither here nor there. That's obviously an error. Down below the dam, there'll be 1,000 square metres of the same vegetation also blanked out. No environmental coverage of what's going on in the river. No mention whatsoever. That's the engineering detail you've got. You've been told no engineering detail of the road below the dam, none above the dam. Nor are you told that there's an intention to fill the creek line above the first crossing to up to 3 metres of fill in a riparian zone. Nor is there any mention of where the second slipway goes, because the second slipway comes right into where stage 1's engineering was supposed to go. But if I may, stage 1's engineering relied on the dam for the music study to work. That will be removed by the second slipway in this plan.
Stop you there.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Just see if there are any questions. Did you have any questions, Linda?
I just had a comment really from
Please, ma'am.
what my understanding of what you're saying, is you're urging the panel not to defer
Please don't.
but you're saying, approve or refuse. Is it, in a nutshell, because the volume of documentation that we have before us and the community has before them, you don't have confidence in the accuracy or the thoroughness of these documents for a proper decision to be made? Is that what
No
you're
one
trying
who
to say?
looks at this accumulation of caggage could possibly say that there is one common stream and that nothing is contradicted or overlapped or superseded. And that's the problem with that bit of land that exists near the dam, the 2,000 square metres I started off with. We've got 5 different reports, 5 different treatments. The Arbor report says it's to be maintained. NALA says it's to be maintained. And the Vegetation Management Plan says it's to be enhanced, maintained. And 2 other reports says it's to be bulldozed. You cannot possibly get a clear answer, and that's the nutshell. And the reason why I'm asking for it to be deferred is that we have gone to the developer and said, hey, come and talk to us, we've got great ideas, great solutions for you. And they've said to us, we're not ready yet, we're going to put this DA, see how it goes, and if we have to, we'll come back and talk to you. So we're asking for them to come back and talk to us, man. Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Could I just ask you about your issue with Lot 11? You said that it was going to be, this is Lot 11 in the subdivision plan.
Yeah, Lot 11 is in the fry pan where you stood this afternoon, and it's between the Linda's house, the black house, and the peppermint coloured block. Now, that's a 3,300 or 3,800 square metre block of land. It has 1 metre between it and a council easement, which said for water drainage, which said it had to be revegetated in native vegetation. And then it fronts up to this more than 2 hectare remnant in the Bundanoon Oval, which the bushfire consultant has said is a managed parkland.
Sorry, can
Now-
I stop you for a second?
Yes.
Can you just show me whereabouts it is on this plan?
No, I'll come
Relative to
across.
it? Oh, someone.
No, I'll come across.
So it's next to this proposal.
Yes, it's this one here, And that's variously 23, 11 or 7, depending on
Right.
which report you
Okay,
look
got
at.
it, got it.
Because the lot 11 in the fire report is a completely different lot on the other side of the dam.
Okay, so in a nutshell, you're saying there's restrictions on this lot or provisions or requirements
Ma'am-
that will affect what can actually go on the lots next door. Is that what you're saying?
If I may clarify, the bushfire consultant has clearly driven into the Bundanoon Oval and said it's all managed woodland, all managed reserve.
Right.
But at the northern end is this 2 hectare portion, which is in that picture. There's a picture there. Aerial, I'll take that one there. Next page over. That's the vegetation that the bushfire consultant says is managed like a golf course. Clearly it isn't. Managed vegetation or managed parkland in the planning for bushfire protection actually specifically says like a golf course, like an orchard, like a vineyard. There's nothing like that in there. So we're saying that that is an established forest since 2015. It's been left alone to naturally regen, and the bushfire consultant has misidentified it. As a result, it needs a 36 metre setback, which would cover the entire block of lot 11, and you'd actually have a -1 metre building envelope. You can't have them. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
But the problem is, if it's approved, it then exists as far as the planning principles. My understanding is, once you approve it, that building envelope exists. And someone purchasing that land will come to council in 3 years' time and say, I want to build my house. And council will rightly say, you don't have an asset protection zone, you can't build that house. And then I'm going to say, well, I paid $1 million for the block of land, what am I going to do? I'm going to come to council and litigate and say, you've approved it, where's my building block? And that's the same with 6 blocks further around the reserve where it's been assessed currently as around the lake, where it's currently been assessed on the basis of grass, but it will be revegetated under vegetation management plan, and you then have to consider it as what it's going to be, not what it is. And so all those blocks, like blocks 15, 16, 17, 18, 14, which currently have an asset protection zone of only 14 metres back from the hazard, will have one of 35. It'll put the building envelope out in the street. And these are litigation hassles that council will have to approve, all because the bushfire consultant has said, oh, when it comes to the final DA stage, that'll be sorted out then. So the consultants covered themselves by page 14, 5th paragraph down in their August 2022 submission. Thanks, ma'am. No, any others, sir?
No other
Ma'am?
questions, thank you. So was that the last speaker? For the objectors. I do have 3 registered speakers for the applicant. Jared Hughes from RG Capital, Jonathan Coy from Nala Environmental, and Kate Harris from Harris Environmental. Who would like to go first?
Hello, we said. My name's Jared Hughes. I'm the company secretary.
Oh, thank you. And can I just do you have the latest subdivision plan with you?
I believe I do, but I'm not an engineer, by the way.
Oh, okay. So no, maybe just the other 2 consultants, if they could have the plan with them when they come up, because there was some discussion of lot numbers there, and I wanted to just ask some questions about that. Okay, please proceed.
Yeah. Well, we're just here to support the application, obviously. With me is Jonathan from our ecological consultants. Unfortunately, Kate Harris, our bushfire consultant, has been a late withdrawal. She texted me just a minute ago and said she is available for phone questions of the panel if required. That's basically what I'm here to support. And
You don't have any.
no, I'm not
You've
in
heard
here. Richard, our engineer,
You've
isn't
heard
here.
the objections. They're principally to do with ecological bushfire issues to do with drainage, the riparian zone, etc. So you don't have the qualifications to
No,
respond to
but the
those.
people who we've employed to put this application together obviously do.
I don't think we do actually have the facility to ask questions on the phone. Is that correct? No, we don't have. So I'll just check. Did anyone have? I didn't have any questions for you. Did you have any? No. So
Okay.
that is regrettable. That your environmental consultant.
Sorry, our environmental consultant, Jonathan, is here.
Oh, sorry, your bushfire consultant. Yeah, so we'll hear from the environmental consultant. Perhaps we can get some response to the issues raised from the objectors.
Yeah, well, I believe
so-
Jonathan's here
Thank you.
specifically to answer any questions.
So if Jonathan Coy could come forward. Thank you. I don't know if you were planning to make a short presentation or whether you're just here for questions.
Just questions.
Thank
Yep.
you. So, well, my first question is, so do you have a copy of the subdivision plan?
I do not know.
Or that's and maybe give him these things as well. Yeah. Oh, yes. And if I could get all these back, yeah. And, oh, sorry.
Right, sure.
Sorry. These ones as well, yeah. And that last one, there was a reference to the correct classification of the bushland ecological community. Thank you. So from my point of view, I would like you to respond to the issues that have been raised by the objectors. So take as long as you like to do that. Thank you.
Sure.
That's my question.
I may need refreshing on some of them as I go.
So I take it you were the one who prepared the NALA environmental.
I did not prepare the report, but I was part of the process, so
Right.
I'm aware of the development.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, please proceed.
So I'll start with the one that's fresh in mind, and that's the plant community type. So what was raised is the new mapping, which was done in 2022. Those came out. Essentially, the mapping that was used in the report, we have to use what is required under the biodiversity assessment method. And at the time of the preparation of the report, the ones available at the time were the previous PCTs before they were decommissioned. So there's no ability for us to overwrite that in the report. We just had to go with that. So that's why they were used in terms of their formation. My understanding is they are a wet sclerophyll forest from what's in our report. I can bring up the table. Let me just grab that. Okay. 1 second, sorry. So PCT 944, I believe. In terms of the vegetation formation class, it counts as a Southern Tablelands wet sclerophyll forest. So I'm not exactly sure where the grassy woodland comes from, but that's from my understanding, that's what it was designated as.
Sorry, can I just say, so your understanding is that the current classification under the 2022 maps is wet sclerophyll forest, is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure about the 22, in terms of our report and the
you're
one
saying
that was
in terms of
used.
the mapping when you did the report?
Correct.
It was wet sclerophyll forest?
Yes, correct.
And your advice is, as you understand it, that if the mapping changed in 2022, you don't have to go back and redo the report?
No, not under. In addition, if there were updates, there's still provision for cases that are ongoing, and
Well,
we're
it's like a savings provision.
exactly so, and we're meant to use the old ones in that provision as well. I can't really speak to the Lot 11 questions regarding bushfire. Obviously, that's not my expertise, and so I don't.
The criticism of the objectives about the number of days that were spent looking for particular species, flora and fauna.
Yep. So the surveys that were undertaken within the guidelines that are required by DPIE or DPIE in the guidelines. So, for instance, the ORCID mentioned undertaken within the required time frame, and the amount of days isn't specified, from my understanding. So that should have been sufficient in terms of the requirements for that species. In terms of the remaining species that were surveyed for, such as the pygmy possum, I believe, was mentioned. That was 4 days of cameras trapping, and another 4, maybe 5 days of spotlighting, which is generally sufficient, we've found, on most projects to identify whether the species is present or not. Many of the remaining species are just done in accordance with their species-specific guidelines. So, microbats, for instance, they have guidelines brought out by the Department of Planning, and they're done in accordance with those. So my understanding, they should be sufficient in terms of ruling out those species or not. There were a few species mentioned, such as the whistling frog. In terms of what is included in the report, it is determined by the biodiversity calculator which species are required to be surveyed for. As far as I'm aware, the whistling frog wasn't brought up in the calculator. So the only one that was surveyed for, I believe, was the red-crowned toadlet specifically. I think that was all the ones that were mentioned.
And then what about this question about the riparian zone and the watercourse? Are you...
My understanding from the report and also the vegetation management plan that it was for retention and revegetation is how it's reported on.
And did you have any input into the vegetation management plan?
I did not myself, no.
Sorry?
I did not, no.
Right.
So, did you have any input into the bushfire report?
No, not the bushfire report. That's, sorry, the other consultancy that's not here today.
Yeah, but in terms of coordinating, there was some criticism in terms of the reports don't speak to each other. The previous objector said, well, the vegetation management plan says one thing, the environmental report says another, and the bushfire report says something different. Like, who was coordinating the overall response or the overall outcome of what was going to be proposed?
We do coordinate with the bushfire consultant. So in terms of the asset protection zones that are required, we use those and we discuss those. In terms of the vegetation formation, the bushfire consultant may have used ours directly, as was said, but they normally make their own determination as well.
So, sorry, had you covered all of your responses to the issues that you felt that you were equipped to respond to from the objectors?
I believe so.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No.
All right, well that is the last registered speaker. That is the last item on the agenda. So it's now 2:00. Thank you. So I'll now be closing the meeting. We will go into closed session and then we'll come back and announce our determination, which will have to be, I think, before 3:30 because there's a meeting following us. That will be live streamed on the YouTube channel if you don't wish to wait. So the meeting's now